Okie dokie. I think that we are ready to start this session, which is a couple of sessions after lunch. And the first session that we're going to have is kind of the Microsoft session, which is going to talk basically about kind of the network of players in a blockchain architecture. So what we're going to look at is basically who is the players, who is responsible for kind of the infrastructure, who is responsible for creating value from the blockchain, and what is the incitements of the different players to do so. Because I think that, and basically the persons that I'm going to invite, so my name is Daniel. I work as something called the National Technology Officer for Microsoft. So I'm responsible for Microsoft strategy, and since a year and more back, I'm also responsible for security. And security has become an incredibly important topic, of course, when cloud has arrived. And with me, I have two partners, which is also going to be examples of how these different players act together in this kind of a new ecosystem, which we haven't really tried out before. So I have on, and I'm going to call up Stefan in a little while, Stefan Falstam, who's the co-founder of a company called CareChain, and I also have Sebastian Hermelin, which is the co-founder of an organization called War on Cancer. So more on that in a couple of minutes. But I wanted to do also a little bit of an introduction where I think we are kind of right now. So what I'm feeling is that there is, to some extent, a lot of different technology solutions, which is also searching for problems. So I think we have had for many years, I think one of the main criticisms actually against blockchain is, if blockchain is so fantastic, where are the fantastic solutions? Why don't we see them? They have gone actually a couple of years. And I think one of the arguments against that criticism is as well, blockchain is complicated. It takes time. It takes time to understand what you're going to use blockchain for, and you have to find the right combination of people that understands the problems versus those who understand technology. And there has been, for a while, really a technology-driven project which has not really found the correct solutions. So I think which is needed, and which I've been seeing actually as well not being done, is to do a real evaluation. Is this problem really something that I'm going to use blockchain for? Because if you don't do that evaluation, you are going to have a lot of problems. And what is those kind of problems? Well, I think this is really typically the key characteristics of a blockchain. So a blockchain is distributed. If you have a problem where you need distribution, that's good. If you have a problem which is not needed, if you also have a problem finding partners that is willing to be part of a distributed architecture, you're also going to have a problem with a solution which by default is distributed. And you really have to understand that. I think blockchain is, of course, a very reliable technology because you have a lot of different nodes. If you cut out a node, it's still going to work. But you also have to understand there is other technologies that is just as reliable. So I think just selecting blockchain technology because you're looking for just reliability factor is something you also could look at other technologies to do. So I think that's not the real key thing to select the blockchain for your problem. And I think the topic of transparency is also very important. So transparency is there by default. So if transparency is good for you, and in this kind of solutions that you're looking for, fine. But there is also a lot of solutions where transparency also is a problem. If you have information that is secret, if you have information that you need for the business solution to not necessarily share, then probably the blockchain solution is not necessarily the right way to do it. And you have really no intermediation of third parties. That's also a very important topic if that's needed for your solution. But there is also other solutions. So I think if in a lot of architecture and a lot of trusted players out there that could also act as good intermediates. So is this something that is really needed? I think that's also a discussion that needs to be done. And in the end, I think there is, of course, a potential for cost and for cost reductions. But it's not necessarily there always. So if I'm going to, for instance, transfer value today, I will probably use Swish, because the cost of using Swish for me as a consumer today is 0. So you have to compete as well with traditional solutions, which also could cost less than a traditional. So what I'm basically trying to say is that I think blockchain is a super interesting technology, but it's not necessarily the default technology if you are not looking for those types of characteristics that blockchain is really good at. And some of those characteristics could actually as well be a problem for you in those kind of solutions that you're looking for. And this is what I have been seeing for the last couple of years. And what I would like to talk to for the next slide before I invite the other guests is that creating in the end a solution that you actually consume as a customer or as a company, etc., you're going to need different players. And from the Microsoft perspective, of course, it is the infrastructure and the platform which is important for us. So if you are going to create a blockchain solution, you are going to need cloud, because there is so many benefits where you get from the cloud provider, which is security stuff, the possibility to distribute geographically as well, the possibility to go up and down and scale in either directions. So that's something that is pretty tough to do if you don't use a blockchain or a platform provider. But you're also going to need some partner, some actor that is going to deploy the application of blockchain, more or less. And it could be a traditional basic blockchain application, but I think there's also a need for something surrounding that. It could be enterprise features, it could be policies, it could be governance. How do you act? How do you access this blockchain? There is an actor that needs to act as an intermediate in that kind of access to the blockchain. And in this case, I'm going to invite up Kershaw soon to talk a little bit about how they are looking at their role as that actor, more or less. But in the end, you're not going to consume that kind of actor as well in a broad sense. You're going to need some kind of an end solution as well. And that's where we're going to invite as well Warren Cancer, which has been thinking on how can I then actually, supply the value, the real value. And it doesn't have to be, that the user understands that it is the blockchain it's consuming, but you could, transfer that into something else. It could be a feeling of trust or something else that you actually could understand easier as a consumer. So that's what I wanted to talk about for the rest of this session. And then I would like to invite up the first guest. Oh, does it go fast here? Oh, which is Kershaw and Stefan. So Kershaw, you're the nominated startup for World Innovation Forum. That's fantastic.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's great.
So I think we should have this like a dialogue, more or less, conversation. So can you introduce yourself and your background and who you are?
Sure, absolutely. So I think the relevant part of the story probably began a long time back. I was doing my dog years as a rocket scientist in southern France. And when I was doing that, I was collaborating with my co-founder now, Johan Sällström, who was up in Stockholm. And this was a couple of years before the World Wide Web emerged. So we discovered email, and we discovered a lot of other technologies that we could communicate. So when I finished, I went up to Stockholm, and both of us got engaged in the boom of that time. Actively engaged in creating companies. I created the first version of DM Bostad at the time, and Johan became the CTO of Icon Media Lab. So what that taught me is that you see something that other people don't see. Something is emerging and it's system changing. So fast forward a few years back, we were engaged in an initiative within Development Explorer to look at strategic technologies. And we looked at blockchain and discovered that this is really interesting. This has the potential of actually transforming the world today in just as much, but in a very different way, which is the emergence of internet did. So we got really consumed by that, and last year we decided to start up our own company. So I think this is really this insight that this is going to happen once more.
Yeah. So basically if I read here, so what is CareChain? It's a joint effort to establish a blockchain infrastructure and personal data management for health. Could you quickly describe what does actually CareChain do, and how does it do what it does?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the challenge today is that if you look at yourself as an individual, there's something like 300,000 different health applications where you can collect health data. Now, as an individual, you may only use like 5 or 10 of those, but the problem is that all the data is becoming fragmented. And if you want to use that data, for example, for machine learning or for something constructive, and look at all of that data together, that's going to be a very hard task to do. So what we set out to do is to use the blockchain to create a foundation, to create a blockchain-based platform for making use of your health data. Then on top of that, we're building a solution both for managing that health data and also looking into creating support for distributed machine learning. So it's really all about enabling the individual to take ownership of their own data. So we're using that, and we base it on the blockchain. So a common question I get is, okay, so you're going to put all of your data on the blockchain? No, that's not what we're doing. But we're using the blockchain for specific things which will enhance that solution. And
do you think it's always positive to use the blockchain? Isn't it difficult to explain to your, participants what is blockchain? Or do you find it difficult to explain what is a blockchain in this case?
So I think if I really try to explain what the blockchain is, then it's a big problem. Yeah. You're trying to explain all the consensus mechanisms and all that, which I don't really profess and understand fully myself. But if you look at the properties that the blockchain give you, that's a different ballgame. So when people ask me about that, I tell them that, okay, so when internet emerged, how many people actually understood at that time, routing mechanisms or TCP/IP? The average person still doesn't have a clue what that means. No, but they understand the properties, the fact that you can communicate, transfer information instantly, and that changes things. So that's, I think, is if you focus on explaining blockchain from our perspective, you can keep book on things. You can make it transparent. You can make everyone agree on the same truth, and you can enable different types of systems of exchange of value to emerge from that. That's a different story. Very different story, because it resonates. People understand that today, when you bookkeep things, you keep it inside of a system. Here, you're actually making it transparent. So that's how I look on it.
Yeah. So let's talk about problems to be solved for blockchain. Do you see that there is any kind of obvious low-hanging fruits that is just waiting for a blockchain to come and pick them down? Or is it not that simple, or is there any low-hanging fruits at all, or?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we are active in the health sector, which means that we're now talking to a lot of actors in the public sector. And in my opinion, that's a very low-hanging fruit, because the whole public sector is a question of stuff that you keep book on. Yeah. That's really what they do. The whole organization of our society is really about assets that you need to keep track of. Yeah. And in my opinion, blockchain is pretty well based for that. Yeah. You look at such a trivial thing, for example, as keeping books of incoming errands to the government. which is not really well done today. And we spoke to a guy managing that, and I said, this is ideal for the blockchain.
Yeah.
You are legally complied. You have to do this. You have to keep it open.
Yeah.
So why not just do that?
Yeah.
And no one can accuse you afterward of actually falsifying anything or removing anything that entered, and because it's all there.
And if we look at the technology that you're using, so you're using Ethereum, right? You connect on Ethereum, and you're using Azure as the platform for running nodes. And why did you select Azure?
So we like what Microsoft is doing from an engagement point of view in this. You early on very much actively engaged with Ethereum, and got involved in the Ethereum Enterprise Foundation, and also the Distributed Identity Foundation, DID. Yeah. So the fact that you as a vendor not only make technology available, but you get involved in these communities, we see as a strong positive. Okay. And that's one part of it. Another part of it, which is interesting, is that when you run something on Azure, you can either run it in the cloud, but you can also have the same technology stack locally. So as we're now building up a foundation with many different nodes where you need to play this, it's great for us to have a technology that can both be executed in the cloud and locally on the site. So having that mix. So it's both an engagement factor and the technology itself. Yeah. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And there is another kind of a popular acronym these days, which is called GDPR.
Yep.
And I think GDPR in combination with the blockchain has some built-in kind of conflicts, because GDPR forces you in a lot of cases to delete data that if you're a personal, you're obliged to delete that data under some circumstances. And you are using health data as well, putting that on the blockchain. How do you, approach GDPR, and have you been looking at that?
Yeah, so it's probably the number one question we get. I mean, you guys are crazy. Like, you put, health data on the blockchain, and you have GDPR coming up. That's just not going to work. So what we're doing is that we're using a blockchain to persist metadata about your health data. So we're using a function called a hash function, which is one of the fundamental things in a blockchain. So essentially it's a digital fingerprint of your data. So we persist that fingerprint in the blockchain. That fingerprint itself doesn't really contain any of your data, but it can be used by you later on to prove that you had that data at a certain point in time. Yeah. So this is one way we are addressing this. So in fact, the health data as such is kept outside of the blockchain. It's owned by the individual. Yeah. But then we use in the blockchain as a proof mechanism. Yeah. And in that way, we can actually enable other solutions that can make use of those properties. Okay. But we're still debating about this. In fact, we were in a seminar on Monday together with a lawyer here in Stockholm. Yeah. And there are assets of this. You can argue, for example, that even if you store a hash, if someone can deduce a pattern of when you store these hashes and know which ones that you stored, potentially together with other metadata, they can figure out things about you, for example, when potentially then if you were running, etc. Yeah. So I wouldn't say it's completely solved, but we think we pretty much cracked it.
It's almost solved.
Yeah, we think so, but I have a fair amount of respect, and we have spent 1.5 hours with Datainspektionen a couple of months back, and they told us if you're building a platform for health data, and on top of that, you're going to let in commercial actors, you are our number one target for saying no. Unless you really, really, really prove to us that this is going to work, we're just going to say no off the bat. And that's how they stopped Hälsa from A last year.
Yeah, exactly. It will be very interesting to follow. So I think we need to wrap up to get in other speakers as well. Do you have any message to the audience, or how do they learn more? The next session will also be about Kirchen. We'll go into more details and more depth of them. But do you have any message to the audience or something?
Absolutely. I mean, blockchain will not solve everything, but it does have certain properties. And if you know those properties and understand how to build a system by using those properties in conjunction with other stuff, you can do magic things. So I think that's the number one message. Yeah. Can't solve everything, but can solve certain things really well in a unique fashion. Okay. So thanks for inviting me. This was great.
Thanks, Stefan.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Okay.
And with that, I would like to introduce the next speaker in this session as well, which is Sebastian Hermelin, which is also going to talk about basically building kind of the consumption of things like Kirchen architecture
Yeah,
what you were doing.
I'm gonna try
So I'm
to.
going to leave the stage on you.
Thanks. Very interesting to share a stage with somebody that is a rocket scientist. Nobody told me that prior to this. So, my name is Sebastian. I'm the co-founder of War on Cancer. We're building a social community for everyone affected by cancer. So an empowering community where we invite not only patients, but also loved ones and, and survivors. And I want to bring you back approximately 3 years to what started the War on Cancer journey. One of my best friends, Fabian Bolin, was diagnosed with leukemia, which is blood cancer, and he's somewhere in the audience here, so you can have a look at him later because he's quite a big guy, quite a buff guy. He's always been interested in eating healthy and living a healthy life. So one of the first questions that he asked his doctor when he was diagnosed was, how can I boost my immune system to have the best possible chance of surviving this? And so he asked his doctor, what can I eat? What should I focus on eating? Can I exercise? And what kind of exercises should I do? And these are the answers that was provided to him by his doctor. So eat whatever makes you happy and focus on resting. And the strange thing about this is that I don't think you would even say this to a healthy person, right? Has anyone ever told you to eat whatever makes you happy? So Fabian did what most people do. They go to Dr. Google, and then they realize that Dr. Google doesn't always want to help you. So he took to Facebook. So he wrote a message, not only to let his friends and family know that he had been diagnosed with cancer, but he also asked people to share this because he wanted answers to his questions, and who could better answer those questions than somebody that have actually been in the same situation. So he wanted to get in contact with a person that had been or was going through the same thing as himself. And as you can see, this went pretty viral. It was shared roughly 13,000 times within the first 24 hours. And on this very day, Fabian decided that he was going to share his story on a day-to-day basis and on a blog called Fabian Bolin's War on Cancer. And when he did this, he realized that not only was writing and sharing his experiences, not only did it have a healing effect on himself, but he also experienced the love and interest in this story from people all around the world. During its peak, it had more than 200,000 people, 200,000 readers on a monthly basis. And what's interesting here is that a lot of them were actually thanking Fabian for sharing his story. So Fabian felt that this had a healing effect on himself, as well as it gave him a purpose because he felt that he was helping other people. To keep a long story very short, Fabian started off with writing about his own story, and then he invited me to create waroncancer.com, the embryo of War on Cancer, what War on Cancer is today. And basically, we created a blog platform. And within a few weeks, we had people from more than 20 countries sharing their experiences of living with more than 35 types of cancer. And with that, we were invited to big tech conferences in Europe. So we were invited to the Dublin Tech Summit to talk about this initiative, and we were also invited to the European MedTech Forum. We actually had to Google what MedTech was when we were on our way there. So we met a lot of industry experts in different fields of cancer. And what struck us was that all of them said the same thing. If you manage to create a space online where you can gather people that are affected by cancer, there's a huge potential in the patient-reported data so that you could possibly collect. So we understood then and there that we need to create something else than what we had. A blog portal simply doesn't cut it. So this is what we've been working on for the past 6-7 months. We're basically building an app for everyone affected by cancer where we want people to be able and to be welcome to share their own experiences, their own journeys, and to read about others. You can also share your own health data and track your impact. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later. And we also want to enable people to understand and to get more knowledge about health literacy, and then also to build your own tribe. And just to explain this, a lot of people talk about tribes, but from a first user experience, I can tell you that basically me reading Fabian's story allowed me to be not only a better friend, but also to be a better support, because that made me understand what he was going through. So this is what we're creating now. And the reason why I'm here on this blockchain conference is that we're currently working together with 6 pharmaceutical companies and a couple of Swedish hospitals on a project called Blockchain to Empower Patients. And I know there's a lot of buzzwords in that sentence, but we're actually utilizing blockchain to the benefit of patients in this project. So just to give you an idea, patient-reported data is something that the health industry and that the pharma industry, they're basically screaming for this. They have no real system of collecting this data. And the reason is real simple, because patients today feel like data points. They want to be treated like humans. We try to achieve this with building a community where we provide tangible values. Once again, going back to the fact that what Fabian wanted in the beginning was answer to his questions, which the healthcare system doesn't provide. So what we want to do here is that we want to help healthcare improve by understanding patients' needs. And we also want to help pharmaceutical companies come up with better and more effective treatments so that the quality of life becomes better for patients. And we're storing all of this data on the blockchain, and there are several important features with the blockchain. Obviously, we have discussed this before. We have GDPR around the corner, and this makes it very much easier for us to handle consent management. It also makes it something that will become increasingly important, I think, when it comes to clinical trials and patient-reported data, is actually knowing where the data comes from, with timestamps and everything surrounding that, which I think blockchain provides a good solution for. But maybe more importantly, we want our platform and our community to be future-ready. We do believe that a lot of industries will move over to the blockchain, not only to be able to store data in a secure way, but to be able to work together with each other and to collaborate. Going back to the core, why we're building this. So everything that we do for the patient and from the patient's perspective. And as you can see, what this picture really represents is the possibility for patients to track where their data ends up. So there's a lot of research today saying that patients are more than willing to share their health data if they understand what impact that can have. Not only necessarily on themselves, but on society as a whole. And blockchain makes that possible. So what this picture represents is a user knowing where their data has traveled. For example, to San Francisco, to a research team there. And the potential here is that you can also track your impact to the extent that you will actually see the results. But War on Cancer is much more than blockchain. It's much more than a technical platform. It's really about a feeling of uniting people all over the world. And so I want to leave you with that feeling and a short movie explaining this.
Cancer. It is incapable of any form of reasoning, and it grows stronger because we fear it. Going through cancer is an extremely lonely process. When I got diagnosed, I completely broke down. But I decided to post a message on Facebook to let my friends and family know.
Hello, my friends, family, and followers. On the 1st of July, I was diagnosed with leukemia. For those of you who are not familiar with this term, it's blood cancer.
The post was shared 13,000 times. I discovered there is a power in us sharing our stories. Sharing creates energy. Each story you read about reaffirms you're not alone. We have created the storytelling platform waroncancer.com for everyone who has their life touched by cancer. Our mission is simple: to make the world a better place for future generations of cancer warriors. This is the time when we can all come together and feel safe knowing that we are not alone in the fight.
For my friend.
Det här är för mina kusiner.
Pelo meu irmão.
Okay, das ist für meine Freunde in Hamburg.
För min vän.
هذا حق أمي.
Para el hijo de mis vecinos.
Det här är för min vän.
Det här är för min vän.
This is for my grandfather.
وانا عايشاني.
Para minha tia. För min farmor och farfar.
For my grandmother.
Para meu camarada.
For min uncle. For my uncle.
Esto es para mi tía.
For my friend.
This is for my friend's dad.
هذا حق ربعنا. За подругу. Для моего любимого человека, моего мужа.
For myself.
This is a platform for all of us. because in the war on cancer, we are more powerful together.
Thank you. Who wants to stay?
It's really, really inspiring. It will be super interesting to follow for the next couple of years or months. What's
Yeah,
happening.
we're actually releasing this app within 1 to 2 months, so keep your eyes open for that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.